I'm a huge fan of three types of game at the moment. The first one is first-person building games. It's always close to my heart, but also automation games and survival games. And after today's release of Star Rupture's first look at co-op gameplay, it seems very promising to me. But going over the video with a keen eye, I may have caught some things that you may have missed from the trailer. So let's delve into all of that right now. And from the very introduction, one thing that isn't mentioned is that the two players have different class types. One's a soldier and the other a scientist. Now they don't go into detail regarding this, but I do think it's safe to assume that if the game supports up to 4 players, that there'll be at least 2 other classes to choose from, which will impact gameplay in some form. And I have to admit, though there is a focus on automation, the game is definitely feeling more like a survival game to me with automation elements. And this actually really excites me. What I've really been wanting for quite a long time is a survival game that, instead of allowing you to harvest higher tier items with higher tier equipment, allows you to automate the production of items. And this is the vibe that I'm currently getting from Star Rupture. The second facility is harvesting the second material, known to us as Wolfram at the moment. And it's here that we can see our playable character has access to a double jump mechanic. There's also a slide mechanic that we see later on, and both of these, along with running, uses up energy or stamina like in other games, meaning we won't be able to endlessly sprint across this large world. Now, to be honest, this doesn't really surprise me given that there is quite the focus on combat elements, but it is worth noting. The gunplay has also greatly improved from earlier trailers, and I love that the pistol's coloured reticles warn you about low clip ammunition. Now, there's a fair bit more to talk about in regards to combat later on and the new weapons and mods, so we'll return to this later on. Now, back at the factory, we do get a look at how progression works in game. By sending resources up to corporations and fulfilling orders to pay back our debt, we're able to unlock better buildables and presumably equipment. We can also see that these resources we send aren't just basic titanium rods, but also more complicated items as you progress, like the generators that you can see here for the level 7 corp, and with 10 levels that we can see available for the Selenian Corporation, and with us having 5 different corporations to work towards, it's safe to assume that there's plenty of unlocks available to us. The corporation names may also suggest what we need to send to space, as well as what we might get in return. For example, future healthy solutions may require flora found on the planet, or items that are used to build things like research and analysis stations. The Selenium Corporation is a space mining corporation, suggesting it will be linked to minerals. As we know, they do unlock the helium extractor, and I think the foundry later on as well. Griffith Blue Corp has an armory token as its icon, which may indicate that this is to do with weaponry and combat. And then we have the Moon Energy that we've already seen requires generators at level 7 to send up. And then we have the Clever Robotics, which to me could point towards electronics and equipment. And at this point, we do move on to a little bit of building gameplay. Looking at the habitat section, it's clear that they will operate similar to how building is done in Subnautica, giving us a modular build system. And as for the factory building, we can see that there are various placement options available to us to make building easier. By the looks of it, there is a world grid that we'll have to stick to, which makes it, again, building easier, but also kind of inhibits our creativity to a certain degree. But we can also see that with the hologram, there's various snapping options available to us, similar to snapping and nudging in Satisfactory to get that perfect positioning on the grid. A big plus for the game is the drone building system, something I know a lot of Satisfactory players would love to have in-game. My only ask is that we have the ability to also remove the HUD, or have a similar style photo mode, as this would be really beneficial to content creators like myself for making thumbnails or recording content for the game when it releases. It's also worth noting that the solar panels we see here are the V1 variant, suggesting we'll have access to better solar generators later on. I also noticed that in the top of the build menu, we do have 3 building materials available in game. There's the basic and advanced building materials that we can produce ourselves, and the base cores, which we'll talk about shortly. We then get a brief look at the logistics system. Using drones and rails for transportation, they refer to a priority logic system in-game for the transportations of resources, which we actually do briefly see when selecting the resources in the fabricator. So we can set it to low, medium, or high priority. With the resources now being sent off though, we get to see the importance of base cores, which require meteors to be harvested. These can only be found after each star rupture and ensures a reason to go out and explore. Here we can see the various other materials that we are able to harvest at the time being, which is wolfram, titanium, calcite, and helium, as well as the base core. After gathering the star tears, which is a gatherable piece of foliage, we can also see that the character briefly runs through the flora and is slowed. Given the character actively avoids them though, and the drain icon that very briefly shows, this may also have a larger negative impact the longer that you're running through these patches. And when building the base core, it also gives us more of a breakdown as to the building in the game. Some buildables need to be built within a base core, but not necessarily all of them. As we can see, the base core is what protects our bases from the heat of a star rupture, making it even more a necessity to go out and find meteors after each rupture so that you can safely continue to expand your base. But presumably we can actually build outside of this if we don't mind risking them being destroyed. Whilst unlocking the helium extractor, it's also noticeable that there's some new currency in the top right of the corporation screen, which they didn't have earlier. At first I thought this was the armory tokens, but I believe this is actually linked specifically to the corporation screen and may be used for unlocking items or even boosting your corporation level. We then get to see a little bit more building, and I like how the walkway build system works, but what I haven't seen yet and what I would like to know more of is if there's a drag and build system for foundations, as it seems like we're going to be placing a lot of individual foundations otherwise. Regardless, with the helium being extracted, we now get a glance at the combat side of the game. Weapon tech has its own currency, the armory token, which shares the same logo as we mentioned before with the Griffith Blue Corp, and you can use these to unlock weapons and weapon mods which affect the way the gun handles. The loadout here looks like we have 5 options to have on our character at a given time. A primary and a secondary weapon, what could be a melee weapon, and the last 2 could be an equipment piece or grenade, and what I'm guessing is our personal shield. Now the armory tokens allow new weapon and mod unlocks, which I presume are either tied to the corporation leveling or can be gathered from points of interest in the world. We can also name our personal storage, but whether that comes with security features, we don't know as of yet. Returning to the survival elements of the game though, the character portraits have 3 icons to the left of them. There's what looks like an apple, a water drop, and toxic icon, which to me suggests that you will need to find food and water to survive in this game, whilst also warding yourself against toxic threats such as the edible plant they eat here. We then have our look at some combat. The exploding blue enemies obviously do damage, but there is this residual cloud which can cause infections in game. Presumably if you stay inside the cloud for too long, you'll get some kind of infection. And when healing, you can heal yourself or you can choose to heal a teammate. You'll also be able to level up your character's skills through things like combat and survival as seen here, which suggests some kind of perk progression, which would make sense given the different character classes. We can also see that the medikit and the grenade in the following clips have a cooldown once used so that we don't actually hold a certain amount on us. We can just use them as and when the cooldown has run out. Really, I am interested to see how this continues to develop. I'm really liking how it's shaping up, and honestly can't wait for their early access release later this year. Now, I know previously in one of my recent videos, a lot of the community have been concerned about the similarity of this to Satisfactory, and I was adamant then that there wasn't that much of a similarity. And yes, there are some similarities, don't get me wrong, but this is as with all other games. And I can clearly see this playing very differently to Satisfactory. And I fear that too often in our genre, the automation games are often seen as another Factorio or another Satisfactory. I mean, when Satisfactory first came out, it was considered, oh, it's a first-person Factorio. Honestly, I feel that this thought track can damage our ability to enjoy games and see progression in any game genre. And I really hope that finding similarities in games won't just turn you away from playing them if it's indeed a good game at its heart. But honestly, I'd love to know your guys' thoughts about all of this. What do you think about the game? Are you liking it? Would you like to see more? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll see where we go with it. But thank you very much for watching, guys, and as always, special thanks does go to all of our incredible supporters on Patreon, most notably our Lunar Eclipse patrons, Firefless, The Calamity, Ben, Star, and Seeker Kala, as well as our Blood Moon of the day, which today is the Souchan Husky. Until next time, as always, ciao for now.